What's up, dudes and dudes to the internet? My name's SCYTHE, and it's a long overdue video today for Trove, where I'm going to be talking about my Shadowhunter build. How I actually build the character, what his stats are, and most of all, I want to talk about this because I'm probably going to have to retire him and actually swap over to being a different class, because with the ECLIPSE update, he kind of ends up getting thrown to the wayside compared to some of the other characters, most specifically in Shadow Towers. So I'm going to take some time to kind of show you all just the basics of what I end up actually going for. Of course, we're not using any augmented gems. These are all legit gems. Legit. It's not like augmenting is cheating or anything like that. There we go. I took care of that frog in my throat. But more so, it's that the augmented gems kind of set things up to a different level. It kind of makes the characters a whole lot stronger. And so I kind of wanted to show you all my authentic Shadowhunter build that I already had on this character before we get into all the augmenting and stuff. So, as far as gear is concerned, whoopsie daisy, I don't even have my little buddy right here. Raptor Berserker, obviously, because you're gonna want to get that extra movement speed buff from attacking enemies, right? That's gonna always be a big essential thing, especially because you do want to have movement speed on all of your gear. So movement, crit, and physical is pretty much what you're gonna want to go for. On the bow, you can go for, the crit hit as well, because physical can actually be the first stat. And then for the hat, magic find, and more movement speed. Of course, second stat ideal is crit damage, and more crit damage. The ring that you want, that honestly depends on your stats. You can go for a magic find ring if you already have the crit hit, but otherwise I like using a crit hit ring just because my gems don't really fully make me have 100% crit hit. So if we actually look at my stats right now, I'm at 165 physical damage, but my base is at 90,000 physical damage, so that's actually not too bad. My crit hit is at 80.8, and we're the Shadowhunter. Remember this, so we can actually sacrifice that. We've got 1475.6 crit damage, so of course that throws our power through the roof. And as far as the passive ability, the subclass ability, I just like to use the Lunar Lancer. It's not the most ideal. Honestly, when I'm doing farming and stuff like that, I've actually I don't know why I said I was using the Lunar Lancer, because I wasn't. I use the Knight's ability at all times because it's going to give you that extra movement speed buff. So the way that the subclass abilities work is based on the amount of PR at 5,000 intervals. You're going to end up increasing the stat of the subclass passive. The flask capacity, as you can see right here, that's going to go up based on the level of the Knight or what other character that you're subclassing. But the increased movement speed is going to be bumped up when you have a Knight at 20k PR and you're on a mount. You're going to have 110 movement speed. So apparently it can end up changing one last time at 25k PR, but that's like almost impossible right now. Of course, this makes the Shadowhunter a little bit more like he can keep up with some of the other characters, but honestly, it still is not really like a super fast farmer or anything like that. I just personally like it, and then as soon as we get off of our mount, we're actually not as fast at all. We're at 87 compared to 110, so keep that in mind, folks. Lots of people always argue that Gonda is useless for grinding. If you have the movement speed, he's actually very, very good because of the fact that you have infinite jump. Now, I know most of you aren't going to be able to get Gonda. I can't even get a Gonda out of the Troves of Wonder to save my life. But I just wanted to kind of clarify that because lots of people like to hate on Gonda and say that it's like not really useful. I think most of all just because they don't really have it. And again, it's not really good for anything other than the late end game when you actually have all that movement speed and stuff. So anyways, let's get to the gems. My class gem actually ended up rolling very, very good. Crit damage, physical damage. You're going to see a bunch of max health on some of these puppies because I haven't actually bothered to re-roll them. And honestly, I don't know if I need to. This is a very important thing that I want to talk about here because if you end up actually augmenting the gems, like we're at 80% crit hit right now. If I even just went on to, where is a gem that actually has crit hit? If I went on to this gem right here and ended up bumping up the crit hit more and more and more, who knows what we would be at? We'd probably be at 85 to 90% crit hit just from augmenting this one gem. And because of that, we don't necessarily have to have crit hit on every single one of our gems. Unless, of course, you're not into the augmenting, you just want to skip over it, then yeah, you're still going to want to be going for the ideal gem of physical damage, and crit hit. Now, another thing too that I want to point out is the fact that we can actually have some max health means that we have a little bit more survivability out in the world, but again, it's not really an essential one. As far as Trove's late game, like the hardcore end game, is for farming power rank now. Power rank is pretty much where it's at. So what you're going to be watching for with your gems is lesser gems would normally be at, let's say, 700 PR would be their maximum. That has actually been increased since the Eclipse update to what I'm not exactly sure. Sorry to say, I'll have another video talking about that. And power gems used to end up maxing out at 800 at their base top power rank. So if you had a gem, an empowered gem that had 800 PR, it was going to end up maxing out roughly around 1855, which is kind of what this one ended up going to. But the PR ended up increasing by like 1 on all your base gems and stuff like that. So I don't know. You know, again, the power rank has been increased in the Eclipse update, so don't quote me on the exact figures right there. But we've got these ones right here. This one's actually a pretty perfect gem. I would have liked to see it have more physical damage. Again, this is where you can see a bulk of crit hit percentage going up there. You know, there's some more physical damage there with decent crit hit. You know, again, this gem you can see is 1552, whereas this one is 1619, which somewhere around 1655, I think, used to be the original maximum PR that you could get on a lesser gem. Honestly, I don't know, because I don't think I've ever had a perfect power rank lesser gem. If I did, I probably destroyed it. Here's my air gems. That I like. Look at that physical damage. That is insane. That is actually a good one as well, because we got, you know, over 100 crit damage, but most of all because of the crit hit. This one ended up rolling pretty okay. 197.6 was actually the best critical damage that you can end up getting on an empowered gem. Of course, all of that has changed now that the Eclipse update is out. Most of all, I want to stress that the Eclipse update made the gems a bit more random rather than having like a full-on solid, this is the best. That said, there probably is still going to be a new best stats that you can end up getting on a gem for sure, but it's a little bit more random because of the fact that we can reroll and because of the fact that we can augment. So, you know, trying to go for a gem that has max PR is pretty much the best that you can do as far as trying to get a gem that is going to guaranteed end up being really powerful, right? And of course it has to have like all 3 stats at the start as well. So then we've got this fire gem right here. Again, I could roll off of the max health, but why? I don't need the extra crit hit, and once I actually start getting into the augmenting and stuff like that, then for sure. Also, I guess I should say explosive epilogue is almost essential. If you can get that on your Shadow Hunter, definitely do it. The Shadow Hunter class gem, required. The Shadow Hunter sucks unless you have his class gem. He is actually one of the worst characters in the game just because his weapons and his projectiles are so broken. And even at the end of the game and how long Trove has been in development, your Shadow Hunter ultimate ability, half the time it's not really going to end up hitting the enemies. If it triggers, oh man, is it satisfying, but it doesn't happen very often. So we got this fire and power gem, which is just mired mojo, which is not really ideal. Again, if you're trying to go for a more movement speed build, and that's what farming is all about, is having a faster character, you're gonna want to probably go for a pyro disc if you can, ideally. And of course, now that you can actually re-roll the stats, it's gonna be a lot easier to find that. However, finding a perfect PR pyro disc, that's where the hard part comes in, right? That's the Trove meta game, if you will, or at least I would think that it is. So you kind of want to just keep your eyes open for that, but it's not really required. Like, it's not like any of this is required. This is just kind of how I have it built, and it works. And when I'm out in the world and stuff and just doing my normal shots, I'm doing about 2.5 mil a hit without a pot. When I pop a flask, I'm doing something over 5 mil. I'm not exactly sure what it is. And then the ultimate, so long as you shadow mark them, is always going to end up doing max damage, which is 10 mil. And then there's no reason to pop a flask when you're using your ult unless you're in shadow towers. And therein lies why I'm most likely am going to actually swap all of these gems off to a different character. Maybe we'll see. You know, I still love the Shadow Hunter. It's always, I think, going to be my main, just because it was kind of the first one when Mantle of Power came out where I went for the class gem immediately, and it was like, dude, this is awesome. And, you know, lots of everybody else seemed to think so as well, which I thought was really, really cool, because he was kind of an underdog before the update and before his class gem. Like, he was useless, right? Very cool character and concept, but just his execution. Now, again, Shadow Towers. Now that the Shadow Towers have been buffed beyond belief, he's useless, man. Like, he really, really is. Throwing down your number 1 is almost like garbage because of the fact that you're constantly having to jump into the air and dodge all of the enemies. And unlike some of the other ranged characters that I would recommend, you know, Pirate Captain, Gunslinger, or Dino Tamer, whereas the Pirate Captain and Dino Tamer, they can jump around and have a lot of survivability because of the fact that you don't have to worry about your energy. Whereas the Shadow Hunter, you actually need quite a lot to throw your number 1 down. Like, look at that. We're actually draining more than half of our energy each time. And once we end up going into the negatives, it means that it takes that much longer for our stamina to end up recharging, which sucks because in Shadow Towers, that'll get you killed. Now, again, I would highly recommend, if you're going to swap over to a magic character, you're going to want to swap over to the Gunslinger, Dino Tamer, Fey Trickster, extremely powerful. Pirate Captain works as well. But for another physical alternative, you know, we don't really have that many options. Unfortunately, with the Eclipse update, we've actually seen almost every close range physical character become absolutely useless. And then any of the other ranged characters, there's only a handful of them that are actually any good. That said, this is before anybody's actually gotten into any of the gem augmenting. So time will tell whether or not it actually ends up being that the game is a little bit more balanced for the augmenting. Personally, I don't really think that it was a good decision, because I feel that maybe like 40% of players, if not less, are going to actually get into the augmenting system because it's so complicated. Again, though, I don't really know what I'm going to swap all of my gems off to. Maybe I'll swap to the Candy Barb, or maybe just go back to the Neon Ninja, because he is still the fastest farmer in the entire game. But most of all, today's video was just trying to show off my specific build for the Shadow Hunter, because so many of you have been asking about it. I have had older videos in the past that was talking about it, but for right now, you know, I didn't have a new one for a very long time. Again, I would recommend just using the Knight subclass ability, just because of that extra movement. Also, the extra flash capacity with Death Defying means that you're going to have a little bit more survivability. Obviously, you're going to use Martial. Use Sure Strike until you can sacrifice it, and then just get yourself a Beamer emblem if you can, because this thing is actually going to be able to one-shot U9 bosses when you're doing this kind of amount of damage. The other types of subclass abilities you can use that I would recommend is the Gunslinger one is okay. The Candy Barb one is nice, mostly because of the movement speed buff, but because it increases attack speed, and the Shadow Hunter's classroom ability actually sets his attack speed in stone, so you can't actually have it increase or anything like that, means that this is kind of useless. The Pirate Captain one, that's not bad. Lunar Lancer gives you extra damage, which is nice, but again, it also ends up increasing your attack speed, which is useless on the Shadow Hunter. And honestly speaking, most of the other ones are pretty useless. The Fey Bomb, that's one that you could end up using, and then otherwise skip the rest. Thanks for watching though, folks. Very much appreciated. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe for more daily content, as well as building up loyalty points that you can spend on my merch store. Links are in the description for that as well. Sign on, stay epic, everybody.